Something remarkable is happening in California right now. For the first time in many years, more people are moving out than moving in. Among those planning to leave, immigrants represent one of the fastest-growing groups. The state that once represented the American dream, the place where anything seemed possible, has become increasingly difficult to sustain. Rising housing costs, shrinking bank accounts, unstable employment, and a general sense of uncertainty are pushing immigrant families toward a difficult question. Is California still worth the struggle? What began as a dream has slowly transformed into something closer to survival. These decisions happening behind closed doors are not driven by emotion alone. They are calculated choices based on real numbers and hard facts. Families are analyzing their budgets, not just holding on to hope. Research on migration patterns and housing economics tells us that when basic necessities become unaffordable, people do not simply complain forever. They take action and relocate. Many immigrants are working more hours than ever before, yet somehow falling further behind financially. Think about working 2 full-time jobs and still losing sleep over rent payments, healthcare bills, or your children's future prospects. That underlying anxiety is quietly pushing thousands of families to plan their departure. However, there is something important that most people overlook. Leaving is not about failure. It is about strategy. In 2026, immigrants are not just fleeing California. They are actively choosing stability, maintaining their dignity, and pursuing a future that finally seems achievable. The reasons behind this mass exit might surprise you, particularly the final one. Reason 1: the cost of living has become unsustainable. For many immigrants, the primary reason to leave California in 2026 boils down to one painful truth. The cost of living has crossed the line from expensive to genuinely unlivable. Rent, food, gasoline, electricity, and even basic services have climbed so dramatically that monthly paychecks seem to shrink before your eyes. What makes this especially difficult is that wages have not kept pace with these increases. You can work longer shifts, pick up extra hours, and still feel like you are making no real progress. For immigrant families who also send financial support to relatives in their home countries, this economic pressure becomes crushing. Economic research and housing studies consistently demonstrate that when housing expenses consume a certain percentage of household income, families face impossible decisions. Many immigrants now spend more than half their monthly earnings on rent alone. This leaves very little room for healthcare, education, emergency savings, or any financial cushion. Picture yourself checking your bank balance and realizing that after paying rent and utilities, almost nothing remains. No safety net exists, no future planning is possible, just month-to-month survival. This relentless financial pressure gradually erodes both hope and motivation. The situation grows worse because these costs are wildly unpredictable. Rent increases arrive without warning, utility bills spike unexpectedly, and insurance premiums climb with no advance notice. Planning for the future becomes nearly impossible when your monthly expenses change every few months. Immigrants tend to be practical decision makers. They evaluate numbers and data, not just feelings. When they examine other states offering lower rent, cheaper groceries, and genuine savings potential, the choice becomes obvious. This explains why many immigrants are not waiting around anymore. They are planning ahead for 2026, selling possessions where possible, cutting expenses wherever they can, and preparing to relocate somewhere their hard work actually translates into stability. When effort no longer produces security, leaving transforms from a risky gamble into a smart financial decision. Reason 2: the housing crisis has destroyed any sense of stability. For immigrants living in California, the housing crisis has evolved beyond mere inconvenience. It has become a constant source of anxiety and instability. Finding an affordable, decent place to live now feels as unlikely as winning the lottery. Rental units vanish within hours of being listed. Rents jump dramatically without explanation. Long waiting lists have become the new normal. For families who value stability and long-term planning, this unpredictability is emotionally exhausting and mentally draining. Research examining housing supply and demand makes it clear that California simply lacks enough housing units for the number of people who need them. This shortage drives prices upward year after year, especially in cities where immigrants find employment opportunities. Consequently, many immigrant families end up crammed into overcrowded apartments, living in shared housing situations, or enduring brutal commutes that steal hours from their lives every single day. Imagine a family of 5 sharing a one-bedroom apartment, or parents waking at 4 in the morning just to arrive at work on time. This is not opportunity. This is bare survival. The psychological toll of housing insecurity often goes unrecognized. When you do not know if your rent will increase again or whether your landlord will renew your lease, your mind never truly rests. Immigrants who once felt proud of establishing a life in California now feel trapped, anxious, and powerless. Academic studies link unstable housing conditions to elevated stress levels, reduced productivity at work, and declining family well-being, particularly affecting children's development. This is precisely why many immigrants are now looking beyond California's borders. They observe other states providing more living space, predictable rental costs, and realistic pathways to homeownership. The prospect of having a stable home without constant fear of sudden eviction or devastating rent increases holds tremendous appeal. For many families, leaving California in 2026 is not about surrendering. It is about finally choosing peace of mind and personal dignity over perpetual housing anxiety. Reason 3: Immigration uncertainty creates constant fear. For many immigrants in California, the most challenging aspect of daily life in 2026 is not their job or their finances. It is the constant uncertainty surrounding their immigration status. Policies shift, regulations change, processing times extend indefinitely, and even minor paperwork mistakes can spiral into life-altering problems. Living under this kind of pressure day after day creates a persistent fear that never truly disappears. Studies examining immigrant mental health reveal that prolonged uncertainty produces serious psychological consequences. When people do not know if their visa will be renewed, whether rules might suddenly change, or if new enforcement policies could affect their situation, their stress levels remain constantly elevated. Many immigrants describe feeling temporary in their own homes, even after residing in California for years. They avoid taking risks, remain quiet at work, and postpone major life decisions like purchasing a home or launching a business. The situation worsens due to lack of clear communication. Immigration processes are frequently slow and confusing, offering limited updates and minimal transparency. Families can wait months or even years without knowing what happens next. Imagine attempting to plan your child's education or map out your career while uncertain whether you will be permitted to stay. This kind of uncertainty quietly destroys confidence and erodes hope over time. As a result, many immigrants are reconsidering their future in California. Some are exploring states that feel less tense, more predictable, and easier to navigate on a practical level. Others are considering locations where community support structures are stronger and the financial burden of legal processes feels more manageable. For these families, leaving California in 2026 is not about running away from fear. It is about reclaiming control over their own lives. When stability vanishes completely, even the most powerful dreams begin shifting toward safer ground. Reason 4: Job market saturation limits real career advancement. One of the most frustrating realities facing immigrants in California is that simply having a job no longer guarantees any real progress. California attracts talented individuals from across the globe, which once created abundant opportunity. However, in 2026, this has resulted in extreme job market saturation. In numerous industries, there are simply too many qualified candidates competing for too few stable positions. Immigrants frequently find themselves stuck in place, overworked, and underpaid despite possessing strong skills and substantial experience. Labor market research demonstrates that when competition becomes this intense, wages stop increasing even as living costs continue rising. This dynamic hits immigrants especially hard. Many hold advanced degrees, professional certifications, and years of relevant experience, yet find themselves forced to accept positions far below their qualifications just to survive financially. Picture an engineer driving for a rideshare service or a healthcare graduate working retail jobs, not because they lack ability but because genuine opportunities are overcrowded. Over time, this situation breeds deep frustration and a profound sense of wasted potential. Another significant problem is job insecurity. Contract positions, short-term roles, and sudden layoffs have become commonplace. Even workers earning decent salaries live with the fear that one corporate decision could obliterate their stability. For immigrants especially, losing employment can also mean losing visa status, multiplying the stress enormously. Studies connect this kind of chronic insecurity to reduced productivity, professional burnout, and declining mental health. This explains why many immigrants are now comparing California to other states where competition is less fierce and career growth feels realistic. They see places offering better work-life balance, clearer advancement paths, and faster professional development. For them, leaving California in 2026 is not about escaping work entirely. It is about finally discovering a place where genuine effort leads to recognition, growth, and long-term security. Reason 5. High taxes mean hard work but almost no savings. For many immigrants, living in California means working harder than ever before yet saving almost nothing. High state taxes combined with federal taxes and rising local fees are quietly draining immigrant household incomes. On paper, salaries might appear reasonable, but once all taxes are deducted, the reality feels dramatically different. Month after month, people realize that despite working long hours and picking up extra shifts, their savings accounts simply are not growing. Economic studies show that when tax burdens increase while living costs remain elevated, disposable income shrinks rapidly. This situation is especially difficult for immigrants, many of whom send financial support to family members abroad, pay substantial legal fees, or support extended household members. After covering rent, utilities, insurance, and taxes, very little remains to build an emergency fund or invest in future opportunities. Imagine working all year long, checking your bank account, and realizing you are still just one unexpected expense away from financial crisis. This feeling has become increasingly common. What makes this more frustrating is the comparison factor. Immigrants communicate with friends or relatives living in other states who earn slightly less but manage to save significantly more. Lower state taxes, cheaper vehicle registration fees, and reduced everyday expenses allow these families to breathe financially again. These comparisons are not emotional reactions. They are mathematical calculations. When people recognize that their effort could stretch much further elsewhere, loyalty to a specific location begins fading. Over time, this financial imbalance creates profound long-term anxiety. Immigrants delay purchasing homes, starting businesses, or even having children because they do not feel financially secure enough. Studies link low savings rates to higher stress levels and lower life satisfaction, even among steadily employed workers. This is why many immigrants are planning their exit in 2026. They are not chasing luxury lifestyles. They are pursuing basic financial stability. A place where hard work actually translates into security, growing savings, and a future they can finally control. Reason 6. Declining public safety is changing daily life. For many immigrants living in California, public safety concerns have emerged as a serious reason to reconsider remaining in 2026. Neighborhoods that once felt vibrant and energetic now feel unpredictable and tense. Reports of theft, break-ins, open drug use, and random violence have increased across many areas. Even residents who have not personally experienced crime feel its impact every single day. Simple activities like walking to work, parking your car, or allowing children to play outside now come with hesitation and worry. Research on urban safety patterns shows that when people perceive their environment as unsafe, stress levels rise sharply, even among those who have not been victimized personally. Immigrants are especially affected because they often reside in densely populated neighborhoods where housing costs less but security measures are weaker. Many describe constantly monitoring their surroundings, avoiding certain streets entirely, and adjusting their daily routines just to feel reasonably safe. This constant state of alertness slowly drains energy and inner peace. Families experience this pressure most intensely. Parents worry about children commuting to school, using public transportation, or being exposed to potentially unsafe situations. Older immigrants also feel vulnerable, particularly those working late shifts or depending on buses and trains for transportation. Studies link ongoing safety concerns to reduced quality of life and diminished community trust, making people feel isolated rather than supported by their neighborhoods. This is why many immigrants are now looking beyond California's major metropolitan areas. They compare their daily experiences with states offering quieter neighborhoods, lower crime statistics, and a stronger overall sense of security. The desire is straightforward and human, to live without persistent fear. For these families, leaving California in 2026 is not about political positions or media headlines. It is about protecting their families, preserving their mental health, and reclaiming their sense of safety. When security feels uncertain, even the strongest emotional attachment to a place begins to weaken. Reason 7. Healthcare costs and access have become overwhelming. For many immigrants in California, healthcare has transformed from a source of security into a financial and emotional burden. Doctor visits, insurance premiums, deductibles, and prescription costs continue climbing even for those who maintain steady employment. Having health insurance no longer guarantees affordable care. One unexpected medical issue can eliminate months or even years of careful savings, leaving families terrified of getting sick. Health economics research demonstrates that when healthcare costs rise faster than wages, people begin delaying or avoiding treatment altogether. This pattern is especially common among immigrant families already juggling rent payments, taxes, and daily living expenses. Many ignore early symptoms, skip routine checkups, or rely on home remedies simply because they cannot afford another medical bill. Imagine living somewhere where getting sick feels like a financial catastrophe waiting to happen. This constant worry quietly damages both physical and mental health over time. Access represents another major challenge. Long wait times for appointments, limited availability, and complex insurance networks make healthcare feel frustrating and confusing to navigate. Immigrants often struggle with paperwork requirements, coverage regulations, and finding healthcare providers who understand their cultural background or speak their language. Studies show that these barriers significantly reduce preventive care usage and increase long-term health problems, particularly affecting working-class families. When immigrants compare California's healthcare situation with other states offering lower insurance premiums, simpler healthcare systems, and quicker access to medical care, the differences become impossible to ignore. The concept of affordable, predictable healthcare becomes incredibly attractive. For many planning to leave in 2026, this decision is not about seeking luxury medical treatment. It is about securing basic health protection and peace of mind. When staying healthy becomes too expensive or too complicated, relocating somewhere more manageable feels like the most responsible choice for protecting your family's future. Reason 8. Education pressure is forcing families to rethink everything. For immigrant families in California, education represents everything. It is often the fundamental reason many came to America in the first place. However, in 2026, the reality of California's education system is creating new pressures instead of fulfilling hopes. Public schools in many areas are severely overcrowded, classrooms are stretched beyond capacity, and teachers are overwhelmed with massive student loads. Parents worry their children are not receiving the individual attention necessary to succeed academically. Educational research clearly shows that high student-to-teacher ratios significantly reduce learning outcomes, especially for children who need extra support. Immigrant children often face additional language barriers or cultural adjustments, making this issue even more critical. When parents witness their child struggling in a packed classroom with limited teacher attention, frustration and guilt accumulate. Many feel they are paying substantial taxes yet receiving diminishing educational benefits in return. Private schooling, once viewed as a viable alternative, has become financially out of reach for most immigrant families. Tuition costs have risen dramatically, adding yet another financial burden to households already under tremendous pressure. Families face impossible choices between paying for quality education or covering fundamental needs like rent and healthcare. Imagine working endlessly just to afford a school that promises basic safety and educational quality. This emotional strain weighs heavily on parents trying to do right by their children. When immigrants compare California's educational challenges with other states offering smaller class sizes, better-funded public schools, and lower education-related expenses, the contrast becomes impossible to overlook. For parents, this is not merely about academic performance. It concerns their children's future stability, confidence, and life opportunities. Many families planning to leave California in 2026 are making this decision with heavy hearts but clear minds. When the educational system meant to secure your child's future feels uncertain and inadequate, relocation becomes an act of parental responsibility, not retreat or failure. Reason 9: mental health strain and burnout are reaching critical levels. For many immigrants in California, the cumulative pressure of daily life has gradually transformed into chronic mental exhaustion. Financial stress, job insecurity, housing anxiety, immigration uncertainty, and safety concerns do not exist as separate issues. They pile on top of each other, creating compound pressure. Over extended periods, this constant strain leads to burnout, anxiety disorders, and emotional numbness. People continue moving through their daily routines, but internally they feel completely drained and depleted. Psychological research demonstrates that long-term stress without adequate relief significantly increases the risk of developing depression and anxiety disorders. Immigrants face particular vulnerability because they often lack strong local support systems nearby. Many suppress their emotions and mental struggles, believing they must remain strong for their families. Imagine waking up every morning already feeling exhausted, worrying about bills, paperwork, and future uncertainties before your day even begins. This represents the silent reality for many immigrant families living in California today. Another frequently overlooked issue is emotional isolation. Long working hours, multiple jobs, and endless responsibilities leave minimal time for meaningful social connection. Immigrants may feel disconnected from both their original home culture and their new American environment. Over time, this creates a profound sense of loneliness, even while living in crowded cities surrounded by millions. Research clearly links this kind of isolation to lower life satisfaction and reduced motivation, making people question whether the ongoing struggle remains worthwhile. This is why many immigrants are now viewing relocation as a form of self-preservation rather than weakness or giving up. They are actively searching for places where daily life feels manageable again, where costs are lower, daily routines are calmer, and stress does not dominate every waking thought. For many people, leaving California in 2026 represents a mental health decision. When survival mode lasts too long without relief, the human mind demands change. Choosing peace, balance, and emotional well-being becomes the most compelling and powerful reason to move forward toward a different future. Reason 10: better opportunities elsewhere make leaving a strategic choice. For many immigrants, the final catalyst pushing them to leave California in 2026 is not solely about what they are escaping. It is equally about what they are moving toward. Across the United States, other states are actively attracting workers, families, and small business owners by offering lower living costs, affordable housing options, growing job markets, and simpler regulatory environments. When immigrants compare these emerging opportunities with California's mounting pressures, the decision begins feeling logical and strategic rather than purely emotional. Migration and labor studies reveal a clear pattern. People relocate when their effort-to-reward ratio improves measurably. In many states across America, immigrants can earn similar income levels while paying substantially less rent, lower taxes, and cheaper healthcare costs. This translates directly into more savings, reduced stress, and genuine financial progress. Imagine working one job instead of juggling two or three and still having money remaining at month's end. This reality is already happening for families who have made the move. Career advancement represents another major factor driving this trend. In less saturated job markets, immigrants often advance more quickly, gain leadership positions, or start their own businesses facing fewer structural barriers. Some states offer incentive programs, skills training initiatives, and community support systems that make integration smoother and more welcoming for newcomers. Studies demonstrate that when people feel genuinely valued and supported in their communities, both productivity and life satisfaction rise dramatically. Perhaps most importantly, immigrants are seeking fundamental stability and human dignity. They want predictable housing situations, safe neighborhoods for their families, quality education for their children, and healthcare systems that do not feel like financial Russian roulette. Leaving California in 2026 is not about abandoning the American dream. It is about redefining what that dream looks like in practical terms. Opportunity still exists throughout America. It simply is not concentrated in one single place anymore. For many immigrant families, choosing to relocate to a new state represents a strategic step toward a future that finally feels balanced, sustainable, and genuinely within reach. Conclusion: a strategic reset, not a retreat. For many decades, California symbolized hope, opportunity, and a brighter future for immigrants arriving from around the world. It represented the place where hard work promised tangible progress and personal sacrifice led to eventual success. However, as we have examined throughout this discussion, the reality heading into 2026 looks dramatically different. Rising living costs, an intense housing crisis, job market saturation, high tax burdens, safety concerns, healthcare struggles, educational pressures, and growing mental burnout have gradually reshaped daily life for countless immigrant families. What remains crucial to understand is that these decisions are not made lightly or impulsively. Immigrants represent some of the most resilient and determined people in America's workforce. They do not leave because of fear or personal weakness. They leave because they carefully evaluate their futures using hard data and clear-eyed assessment. When sustained effort no longer produces stability, and when constant stress permanently replaces hope, even the deepest roots begin loosening from the soil. Research on migration patterns consistently shows that people choose to move when remaining in place becomes more psychologically and financially damaging than starting over somewhere new. Another essential truth is that opportunity in America has shifted location, not disappeared entirely. Other states across the country now offer what California once provided so abundantly. Affordable housing, manageable tax structures, realistic career growth, safer communities, and genuinely better quality of life. For many immigrants, leaving California in 2026 represents a strategic reset, a conscious way to protect their families, preserve their mental health, and secure their financial futures. This movement is not an ending. It is a transition, a natural evolution. It reflects changing economic realities, evolving personal priorities, and a fundamental human desire for balance in life. Choosing peace over pressure, stability over constant struggle, and dignity over perpetual survival mode is not failure by any measure. It is wisdom gained through experience. As 2026 approaches, many immigrants are not walking away from the American dream they originally pursued. They are simply relocating that dream to new ground where it can finally take root and grow again.